Saw Gerrera.
He fashions himself as our leader, though no one elected him.
Civilians? Times change, targets change. Why don't you take a look at the insurgents you were sent to destroy?
Are you saying we should actually become a terrorist organization? That we should slaughter anyone between us and the Empire? Why not? Saw asked. That's how they'll spin it anyway, right, Jin?
You target civilians! Kill those who surrender! Break every rule of engagement! If we degrade ourselves to the Empire's level, what will we become?
There she is! That's the leader the rebellion needs! Where is that fire, that passion, when your people need it most?
What's up, MetaNerds? This Complete Life video will put every piece of media with Saw Gerrera in chronological order, from birth, through freedom fighter in the Clone Wars, to an ever-increasing brutality in the fight against the Empire. That labeled him one of the highest priority terrorists, and even burned his bridges with the allies in the Rebel Alliance. This will have everything released prior to the Andor show, so like with all these types of videos, there may eventually be new content, and when I cover that, it'll be linked down in the description. His story starts at grid coordinates 09, within the Japriel sector of the Inner Rim. Though near the core, Onderon was historically always seen as isolationist and violent. As Mandalore the Preserver once put it,
like us, the people of Onderon are warriors. Early in their history, they built ISIS to protect them from the beasts that swarmed on their world. No matter how far they've progressed, they're fundamentally still warriors standing watch on their battlements. They don't like outsiders, and their inability to take ideas from other cultures gives them a fundamental disadvantage in warfare.
Sith Lord Freedon Nad conquered this world, setting up a dark side theocracy in Isis, pushing out the natives who would form the resistance fighters known as the Beast Riders, using various powerful creatures to bring the war to the Sith from land, air, and sea. Saw Gerrera was born in this city, Isis, sometime around the mid-40s BBY, and he would have been raised with stories of the heroes of old. Using guerrilla-style tactics, these forces were able to impress the galaxy by defeating the Mandalorian and Sith allied forces. But this history was increasingly mythologized over the centuries, and over the next 4 millennia, all would see Onderonians as a fiercely independent people. By the early 20s BBY, Saw would share a close bond with his sister, Stila, and like most Onderonians, they respected their benevolent and long-reigning King Ramses Dendo. In 24 BBY, the growing tensions in the crumbling Republic caused thousands of star systems to formally secede, forming a new government called the Confederacy of Independent Systems. The next 2 years would see an ever-growing violence, though representatives in each group were still in constant contact and working for peace. King Dendup spent these years assuring his people that Onderon would remain neutral. Even after the Battle of Geonosis in 22 BBY plunged the galaxy into the Clone Wars, the king tried to keep his people calm and optimistic. But Count Dooku would not miss this opportunity to take a world unprotected by Republic forces, a world that would make for a perfect staging area so close to the core. With an overwhelming droid force, he quickly took the capital Isis, and put in place Confederate law, placing the king in prison, and letting the people elect a new king. The problem was the choices were rigged, and Dooku's puppet Sanjay Rash would take the throne. Dooku knew the bureaucratic limits of the Republic and Jedi Council, and just by having an election, he knew that the Senate would be restricted. But Anakin Skywalker was not concerned about the rules. He proposed that the Jedi help train the Resistance fighters loyal to King Dendup. And for once, Windu agrees with Skywalker. But Kenobi and Yoda are blunt in their description of this plan.
That sounds like terrorism, Anakin.
A means to an end. Fear cannot be. Stop those who spread terror. The Jedi must.
What you're suggesting would open up dangerous possibilities, and we must not train terrorists.
Rebels.
Ahsoka is bothered too, picking up on things like mainly affect droids, and that Anakin was so glib in calling this secret initiative by the Jedi to circumvent the local leadership of a planet and get around the Republic Senate.
This could be a great new weapon for us.
He described this morally murky clandestine operation as a great new weapon. Once it is agreed that they will move forward, but only to act as advisors, Kenobi says he is coming with. Shortly after, a new class shuttle made its way through the thick clouds of the Onderonian night, and dropped Kenobi, Skywalker, Ahsoka, and Rex into the lush jungle. And it isn't long before they are spotted by rebels. Ahsoka introduces herself to Saw's sister.
I'm Commander Tano. We're here to help you take back your planet.
They make it back to the rebel base by dawn, and Rex sees that they are not the battle-hardened clones that he was used to working with, but that they weren't shinies either. And Skywalker introduces himself to the apparent leader.
Saw Gerrera.
He fashions himself as our leader, though no one elected him.
As Kenobi asserts that they are not there to fight in this war, Rex promises to teach them some of the tricks and tactics they've learned to take out the Clankers. Ahsoka is surprised, but happy to see Lux Bonteri here. Last time she saw him, he was trying to expose the fact that Dooku killed his mother, the Onderon senator. Lux was willing to turn to Death Watch to get revenge. She developed a crush on him, one which provoked Steela's jealousy. And during this drill against the AAT, Saw shows that he thought of Lux as his greatest rival. Bonteri came from nobler stock. He became a senator like his late mother, and was growing ever beloved in the Gerrera's rebel group, even gaining the affection of Saw's own sister. Saw's feelings towards Lux threatened the success of their group.
You're a terrible soldier, Bonteri.
I'm not sure if they're more interested in fighting the droids or each other.
Steela would have to be a mediator between these two, as the power struggle with these Jedi aides seemed to be hurting his ego too.
Sit down, boy. This isn't the Senate. You've got no talent for this.
And it continued into their work with the droideka, where technique was more important than power, and both Gerreras failed. Ahsoka was feeling jealous of Steela and Lux's bond, but Saw moved in to get closer to the Togruta.
Hey, Commander. How about, helping me practice?
Once Saw got it, she moved to help reassure the frustrated Steela, before moving on to sniper training. And during the exercise, they spot active battle droids moving in on them. Dozens of B-2 and B-1 droids opened up on the rebel camp, and Anakin was about to launch a counterattack, but Kenobi reminded them of their limits. Though their improvised explosives would take out the first wave, the AAT would blow through their defenses, prompting Steela to release their beasts. Like the rebels of old, the wild beasts of Onderon would rip through the enemy forces, and create an opening for Lux and Saw to work together.
Hey, Bonteri, you ready to try again?
Showing that he could be a unifying leader, Saw gets past their petty rivalry, and compliments the senator. When they all regroup, Lux puts forth the plan to sneak into the capital disguised as hunters and merchants. And when it works, Lux credits Saw for pointing out just how dumb these droids were. Once inside with all their equipment, they were able to ambush droids and fade back into the civilian population. Their Republic advisors were always nearby watching, and giving ideas for more complex ambushes when the target was more heavily defended. All happening within the shadow of the palace, King Rash was starting to lose his cool. He summoned the previous king from his prison cell and accused him of coordinating the insurgency.
Call off the attacks. I cannot call off what I did not dictate.
Meanwhile, the group was celebrating their latest victories, and the Jedi had to warn them that the public were afraid of these attacks, that the public could turn on them if civilians were hurt, or if the king punished them all.
I don't understand. Why are they afraid?
They're afraid we're not strong enough to win. We need to earn their trust.
Ahsoka would be left here to further monitor and train the rebel forces, and knowing that they had to both show strength and improve PR, they set their sights on the main power grid, but needed to know more about the droid's capabilities first.
Those droids should have all the intel we need stored up in those tin cans of theirs, right?
They should.
Then I'll get us one.
By placing an IED in the path of a major droid patrol, it would successfully draw out reinforcements from behind the walled power grid. When they get surrounded, Ahsoka is forced to use her lightsabers to keep from being hit. And this time it is Lex that fails at the grenade roll. Saw pushes him out of the way and draws its fire, while his sister finally takes it out, just as reinforcements finally arrived in the form of an AAT and B-2s. With the move Rex taught them, they're able to temporarily disable it, and with a little slicing help from his sister, Saw was able to drive it into position. With excellent sharpshooting and a blast from the tank, the door was open, but the final defense of commando droids came rushing out while the gun recharged, giving Lux a beating and stripping Steela of her pistol, but the Senate boy was able to get a bolt right through the droid's circuits. Saw's next shot on target, the power grid was down in a spectacular display of the rebel strength. Hopefully the droids would run out of charge soon, and then the rebels could retake their home. Up above, the king calmly watched the fireworks and declared that he would use this event to his advantage. With night vision supplied by the Republic, the rebels spent the night droid hunting, and before daybreak, the citizens were emboldened enough to openly praise the resistance. In their hidden HQ, the report back to the Jedi and Rex, Skywalker, and Kenobi all agree that the king will hit back hard, but that they have the people's will on their side. Their next move was to push for a leader that the people can love, and Saw smiles in confidence. The unofficial leader could already see himself at the front of cheering crowds lining the streets of his hometown. In the palace, the king was desperately explaining that the rebels were far better equipped and trained than they expected. Dooku was displeased and said that his reinforcements came with a new general as well. One Rash would obey, presenting the T-Series droid Kalani. These tactical droids contained a supercomputer dedicated to the entire known history of war, with some of the most creative AI processing to generate the most likely possibilities in an instant, updating for each new factor detected on the battlefront. While the next wave of CIS forces were preparing, a debate of strategy between Lux and Saw resulted in an unexpectedly passionate speech by Steela. one that pushed the revelous rebels to vote for their new leader, nearly unanimous in their support for his sister.
Okay. Looks like it's been decided. You're the leader.
Saw.
As she races after him, Ahsoka learns for the first time that they are brother and sister. Shortly after, the rebels are placing small holoprojectors around the city and lay in wait for a major patrol. Opening up from the rooftops and behind the stalls of the bazaar, Saw effortlessly takes out a tank while Steela leaps down to give her formal introduction to the people.
Onderon is ours. We need your strength to reclaim our planet and restore our sovereignty under our true king.
King Rash is being driven mad by this open insult, and Kalani is quick to point out that General Tandin's own ranks may be compromised by this message of insurrection. Their egos battle in front of the throne, as the human general reveals their intel on the major players of the rebellion, but the king cuts through it all by announcing that Dendup will be executed in the main square. They all know the intention is to scare the public out of support for the rebellion. Steela says that they should plan to strike during the execution, even if that's what they most expect. But Saul claims he has another idea and defiantly walks away, putting the new leader in an awkward position, to give an order to her brother to stand down. They all plead with him to not do anything reckless, but Saul isn't taking well to his new position.
We can't afford a reckless move right now.
Yeah. Go write a speech about it.
With a grapple hook, he would scale the outer walls to the private quarters that made up Dendup's prison. Feeling triumphant, he made his way to his king, taking a knee to honor the man and reveal his rescue plan. But Saw's hero was not as happy to see him.
Are you one of the meddlers creating disorder, interfering in the affairs of the throne?
When Saul mentions the Jedi's involvement, however, the king feels that they might have a chance at redemption, to finally choose and boldly take sides with the Republic. As they leave, he fires the grapple, but it strikes against a one-way shield, putting the entire compound on full alert with sirens, floodlights, and droids, making it look like the ex-king was definitely in cahoots with the rebels, and now they had just captured one of their most important leaders. Steela's spy sent to watch over Saul reports back that he was captured, and Lux is quick to mobilize everyone to attack the palace, but his sister knows that Saul wouldn't want them to be taken out on a suicide mission. He knew the risks, and they all put down their arms and prepare for their mission to liberate Dendup during the execution. The entire night was spent torturing Saul, with General Tandin warning Kalani that this method would not yield any results, and torturing him to death would only make him a martyr to rally behind. After hours of more electroshock, Tandin brings Saul into a room to try some good cop, giving him a drink and pleading with him that he just wants to protect him from the evil separatists. But Saul would not budge, calling out the general's cowardice and falling in line with this puppet king, and protecting these off-world forces.
I'm not a terrorist. I'm a patriot. King Dendup chose his people instead of taking a side in the intergalactic war. Separatists have taken over Onderon because we let them.
The following morning, what seemed like the entire city was packed into the square to witness the execution of their beloved king. With Magna Guards ready to activate the electro-guillotine, Dendup's head is passed through, and just as the order is given, the rebels spring into action, and Steela is able to get a perfect shot on the guards, and Lux gets smoke grenades out to give the rebels the edge, as they burst through with close-quarters moves to blast and beat their way to the platform and rescue the king and Saul. Plan worked perfectly, but as they split, B2 droids cut some of them down and quickly surrounded them, the T-Series stepping forward to arrogantly demand their surrender. Ahsoka was fighting everything in her Jedi spirit to just watch this without intervening. As the rebels were lined up and about to summarily execute them in front of everyone, above the old general was watching on, and as Dendup was placed back in the guillotine, Ahsoka couldn't hold it. She sprinted forward, gripping her lightsaber, only for General Tandin to come storming down the steps with the palace guards.
Traitor! I was. Not anymore.
That nod to Saul would reassure him that he was right in sneaking into the palace. It had helped in ways he didn't expect. That conversation with his captor led to the old general dragging the false king into the crowd. He also sent his guards away to help protect the rebels. But when the battle droids raised their blasters to them both, Ahsoka spun out of the crowd, defying her master's orders, but in a way that Anakin had done so many times to his own master, fighting to save the individual while disregarding the coldly logical grand plan. She helped the general to escape through the crowd, and as the people heard the calls from King Rash to kill all the rebels, the people rose up and were only held back by the wide-bodied B2s. But at least their plan had worked even better than expected.
Count Dooku will want me dead more than ever.
Then we'll have to teach them another lesson. Together.
The following days would spread the king's message that the rebels were the true sons of Onderon, and was leading to pockets of citizens rising up.
The people are turning against the droids. There's rioting in the streets now.
That's a beautiful thing.
Saul can't wait to use this momentum and take the fight to the clankers in the capital.
We all want victory, but not at the cost of innocent lives. If we fight door to door, no one is safe.
This is war, Steela.
And the king and Ahsoka agree with the sister over the brother. Even from these earliest days in the fighting, we see the attraction to the chaos of war. Surely on the right side of this war, but showing little concern for the people that were caught up in it. In the palace, the furious and humiliated king is planning the counterattack with General Kalani, the droid assuring him that the newly supplied droid gunships would provide the air superiority needed to slaughter all the rebels throughout the thick jungle and mountainous terrain. The land forces would lead the assault, with rows of hundreds of B-1s up front, followed by tanks and B-2s, with commando droids working to execute the pockets that revealed themselves. Just as the rebels were getting cocky with their Ruping Air Force, the HMP's fire made quick work of them and the mounted weaponry. Steela was shaken, and they had to scramble to evacuate their command position. Saul escapes through the canyon and doubles back to see gunships turning on the ground forces. There was nothing they could do to counter this new threat, but Saul tried to drop a detonator on it. His excellent and daring piloting got him close to one, but only for the shielding to harmlessly disperse the explosion, and its targeting systems quickly locked on and shot him down. Saul tumbling to the battlefront to be whisked away by the old general on his Delgo mount. While countless more of the rebels and allied Andoranian army forces were being cut down, Ahsoka was pleading with Kenobi to send help. The response was that even Windu was cautious against getting involved now. His only advice was to evacuate as many as he could back to Coruscant, and when his comm is cut off, Kenobi tells Anakin that they have to remember that this was supposed to be an experiment, a test to see if the Jedi could covertly train local freedom fighters to oppose CIS advancement. But clearly this was a failure, and they should just learn from this. But Anakin thinks that all they have to do is find some third party to help the Andoranians. And when he thought who could have a bunch of illegal military-grade missiles laying around, his mind went right to Hondo, the Pirate King. Saul and the rest of the group were feeling hopeless, but Steela springs into action before morale could drop too low, ordering new placements to keep the gunships back. And with all the hits to his ego, Saul could see the truth in this moment of darkness.
You really are the best leader among us. Couldn't be more proud of you, my sister.
I learned from the best, big brother.
Just then, a large transport comes storming down on their position. All are terrified, but Ahsoka senses something, and all relax, if still confused, when the pirate comes calmly strolling down to present his gifts.
Rocket launchers.
Shoulder fire? Very expensive.
Commandos open fire on them, and while Steela worries that their base was spotted, Ahsoka thinks it was just a patrol, and they race down to the main battlefront to see how well these things worked. Saul is eager to fire first, and once he gets a lock, he fires without pause, grinning as he watched the shields flicker and fail as the HMP crashed to the ground.
I love this!
Immediately, the morale flips, and they're all ecstatic to shoot down their own gunship, while a frantic call from base reports that the Separatists had found them. Commandos try to extract intel, but the stubborn rebels won't give up the location of the king, and the gunships destroy everything on their path to the door of the HQ. The king is escorted out amid a hail of blaster bolts, and is only saved by an amazing shot from their leader. Saul is dispersing rockets, and his group is able to clear out a trio of HMPs. But relief turns to terror as he watched his target careening towards the king's location. It is likely the highly advanced droid brain on the ship did this on purpose. These ships are droids, just like how some keep fighting even when you chop up their bodies. And we've seen before how ships can calculate rapidly the best way to still carry out their mission, whether it be crashing into a hangar to prevent escape, or in this case using the last of its power to use itself as a weapon. The target wouldn't be killed on impact, but the crash caused the cliffside to collapse, and Steela made sure to save the king, and desperately tried to make it back up herself. Saul looked on helplessly as his sister dangled hundreds of feet over the rocky canyon ground. Her boyfriend Lux was just out of reach to help her, and slips and would have fallen to his death if Ahsoka did not pull him up through the Force. Next was Steela, and the Jedi assures her that it was going to be okay. But the will of the droid mind was able to redirect its power just enough to get online and fire a bolt at Ahsoka. Though a weaker shot, it was enough to break her hold on the rebel leader. Though Lux snaps a perfect shot to finally kill the mechanized beast, when they rush to the edge, they see the lifeless body of Steela down below. By the time the rest of the forces get down to her, Saul had been holding his sister and blaming himself for everything.
It was my fault. I shot that gunship down, and it crashed into her position.
Saul, it's not your fault.
Meanwhile in the palace, the war was over with a few sentences by Count Dooku.
A prolonged war does not interest me, General.
Their rebellion grows with every small victory.
Shortly after, her entire hometown of Isis and the cities from all over Onderon came to the funeral of their patriotic leader. Saul was the first in line of mourners. No other family are present, likely long dead, perhaps even proxy victims of this clone war too. And Kenobi looks to Saul as his Padawan speaks about the effect this will have on the future.
Steela will be a powerful spirit in their lives.
Yes. For all of us.
And his words to Ahsoka were short.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thanks, but it's over now. Let's just leave it at that.
And over her body, the true king declares their freedom to Steela's people.
Remember this day, the day Onderon became free again.
A year later would be the final year of the war, 19 BBY, and while entrenched in heavy fighting on Urbana, Skywalker would get an urgent call through his secret encrypted subspace communication frequency, a frequency that was codenamed Fulcrum.
We've received a transmission from someone using your subspace frequency, Fulcrum.
Saw Gerrera.
Perhaps the siege at Onderon has taken a turn for the worse.
No, sir. It's not Gerrera.
With Lux appointed senator by King Dendub and their joining the Republic, Dooku was now attempting a siege, not looking for another ground fight with these Onderonians who had mastered guerrilla-style warfare. This points to Skywalker and or Ahsoka staying in close contact with Saw Gerrera after this incident, as the only people that know this secret frequency are Ahsoka, Kenobi, and Yularen, and now apparently Saul. This call ended up being from Ahsoka, but the fact that he expected it to be Saul points to what I think may be Skywalker hoping to use Saul's expertise to train other guerrilla forces across the galaxy, as this was a tactic that he was clearly fond of and proud to see as a success. An ironic relationship, as that is exactly what Saul would do, and it would be the Sith Lord Darth Vader that would spend the rest of his life hunting down the ever-elusive cells of rebellion. Shortly after this, Clone Force 99 would be deployed to Onderon with false intel from Tarkin.
We have tracked a group of insurgents to the Onderon sector. They must be dealt with.
What sort of insurgents?
Separatist forces.
The Clone Special Forces group was happy to use the increased firepower provided by the Empire, even if they could get a sense that something was off with this new order. They would descend via their stealth transport, the Marauder. More than a year before, the Onderonian saviors were picked up in the dark, thick jungles. But at this point, Saw's resistance against the Empire had already pushed his forces back out of Isis. When the clones get into position, Hunter is skeptical that these are old CIS holdouts.
Tarkin said insurgents, not droids. I'm not sure they're either.
The motley crew of Onderonian civilians were protected by the hardened guerrilla fighters that had swarmed over these elite clones. Hunter was the only one who noticed, and saved all of their lives by ordering Crosshair not to fire. Taken prisoner, they are brought before an unsurprised Gerrera.
They're Republic fighters. Why would Tarkin send us to attack our own forces?
Because we refuse to fight for an empire.
And Saul has to catch them all up to speed on what this new galaxy was really like.
We expected to find battle droids, not
civilians. Times change, targets change.
Though Saul knew that they were not under threat from these ones, their spot was not safe and they needed to move on, explaining that these were the first sparks of the Phoenix of Rebellion. While calling on the memory of all those lost, Steela's spirit still led the fight.
If we give up now, everything we fought for, everyone we lost, will have been for nothing. I won't let that happen. The Clone War may have ended, but a civil war is about to begin.
Desperate for any help, and still hopeful for his old allies, he does not execute these Imperial clones.
Clones once helped us free Onderon, so we'll give them a choice. The old ways are done. You can either adapt and survive, or die with the past.
The problem was that Tarkin was suspicious of Clone Force 99's loyalty, and the Imperial drone saw Hunter disobey a direct order, and see Crosshair be willing to fight his commander over it. For this, the sniper would be promoted, his old squad mates declared traitors, and Crosshair would lead the mission to finish the fight on Onderon. This ragtag group was easily overwhelmed, and brutally executed. Even the trooper that refused to kill the civilians was executed, and this would place one of the earliest Imperial massacres against Saw Gerrera's people, and the first mission of what would become elite trooper forces like the Death Troopers. Imperial military command was made up of many of the same Clone Wars leaders, like Wilf Yularen, who knew all too well just how proficient Saul was as a guerrilla fighter. And as Exanto Devo would state, quote, "For years, Saw Gerrera was the most wanted criminal in the galaxy. His rampant terrorist strikes resulted in atrocious civilian casualties, earning him this distinction. He was known to subject prisoners to torture behind the bounds of the Alderaan Convention. And he made sure to find allies that agreed with this style, a tactic that would only serve to make civilians feel torn between the corrupt, oppressive order of the Empire and the violent, reckless chaos of Saw's group, now going by the name the Partisans. Early leadership came in the form of Clone Wars vets and mercenaries, and one of these was a Lasat mercenary hired to defend Onderon. He fought off an Imperial platoon under the command of ISB Agent Callus, a fight that radicalized the agent and made Callus even more cold and ruthless than ever.
The boys and I were deployed to Onderon to bring peace and security to a troubled world. We were on a routine patrol and ran into one of your rebel friends, a Lasat mercenary who worked for Saw Gerrera. The Lasat calmly walk through smoke and fire to finish my unit off.
In 17 BBY, Saw would be working out of an unofficial partisan headquarters in the city Jabuto, on the planet Rajtiri. Located in the hidden back room of a seedy cantina, a room that was filled with miscreants of all kinds, noble bounty hunters, smugglers, and rogues, all enemies of the Empire with a lifetime of experience, and with a vast array of skills and connections that were all for sale. One of these smugglers was Haz Obit, and he was trying to pitch a lucrative job to smuggle arms and ammo into an autonomous sector owned by Zerpan Industries, just outside of the corporate sector. Haz Obit was overconfident in the promises of the employer that the rebel allies in the Zerpan checkpoints would just wave them through, a complacency that angered Saw, and he pushed the group to develop a contingency plan in case things went south, and wouldn't let them get off with just timidly saying that he was right.
I'm right, because where most of you have spent your careers steering courses around confrontation, I've flown into the thick of it.
The mission details took an odd turn, and Haz explained that just minutes after they delivered the goods, Imperial ships were scheduled to land there, so they had to maintain a precise timeline, and he was impressed with how quickly Saul understood the true intention of this job, and how directly he explained it to the group.
So, the mission is to land our cargo, wait for the Imperials to arrive, then stand aside while they accuse Zerpan of purchasing stolen weapons. In so many words, Haz said. Saw narrowed his eyes and nodded in a conspiratorial way.
They would be able to get through the checkpoints, and went to work offloading the cargo, pouring sweat as a line of humans, aliens, and droids worked in unison to get weapons through the long cave complex. And Saw talks to Haz about the Imperial control in Onderon, that unlike during the Clone Wars when it was Onderonians versus droids, now they were fighting against each other. Onderonians against Onderonians as loyalist and rebel factions clashed. He asked if it was worth it, but Saul says that the point was never to win a particular battle, but to spark rebellion against the Empire. And while Haz laughs that this is like throwing dirt at an enemy only to get stomped to death, Saul explains,
"If we can persuade enough people to start throwing dirt," realizing that he was supposed to finish the thought, Haz considered it, then said, "Eventually we bury them." Saw grinned at him.
As they finish offloading, Haz realized Saw and the human rebel he was speaking to referred to the fight against him instead of the Empire or them, as they had come to know that Admiral Wilf Tarkin was the cold, efficient imp that was setting these sectors ablaze, outsmarting countless rebel cells and claiming enormous swaths of the galaxy for the Empire, ending millennia of autonomy for many sectors. And Saw gave some parting words of wisdom for the rebel.
"Just remember to keep him guessing. Strike, withdraw, and regroup. You need to keep him as off balance as you can, so he can't gain a foothold."
And again, Saw picks up on a subtle comment from Haz, which was vague in whether he was a true freedom fighter or just a smuggler. So Saw reassures the local rebel.
"Either way, you have my word. I'll be here till it ends."
At this time, Haz Obit was being paid incredibly well by Orson Krennic to smuggle weapons onto worlds that were deemed important to the top-secret Death Star project, codenamed Project Celestial Power. By framing these worlds as rebel allies, and by manipulating his old friend and renowned Kyber energy physicist Galen Erso, he was able to add rank squares to his chest at a rate that was driving Tarkin mad. The fight with these recently armed rebels was intense, but ultimately a victory that resulted in Obit being captured and Saw Gerrera narrowly escaping. With the help of some powerful chemicals and torture droids, Obit reveals Krennic's plot. He would learn that Obit had become friends with the Erso family, coming to like them during his time using his smuggling skills to get them through dangerous areas. Tarkin would offer Obit immunity if he would work as a double agent against Krennic. And the smuggler loved his first orders from Tarkin, to make the Erso's dream come true and help them escape and hide away in some remote part of the galaxy. Tarkin was confident that eventually other scientists would be able to finish the Death Star project, but Krennic's threat to his own rise had to be addressed immediately. Over the next week, Obit would contact Saul and convince him of the importance of the Erso family, and when he agreed, Tarkin put the plan in motion with a call to Krennic. His arch-nemesis had just left the Erso home, and was stuck in holiday traffic on Coruscant, when the gloating Tarkin explained that he had learned that Haz-Obit was his secret weapon, but had escaped from Imperial control and was last tracked on course to Coruscant. Krennic panicked and sped to the spaceport near the Ersos, finding Haz there looking extremely distressed. Krennic was certain that the smuggler was there to whisk away his lead scientist, but Haz assured him that he was just trying to evade Tarkin. He hadn't sided with the rebels, and just wanted to get down to the lower levels as quickly as possible. Krennic held him for some time, but did realize that the Ersos weren't showing up, so Haz must have been telling the truth. All the while, the most wanted man in the galaxy was making his introduction.
I'm called Saw Gerrera. You're Lyra, Galen, and Jin. Galen said, stroking his daughter's hair. Good to meet all of you.
Knowing the truth serum and torture combo the imps like to use, Saul would never tell Haz where he brought the Ersos, and even when Haz later wanted to find out for himself, he avoided contact with Saul out of fears that he was being monitored. While in Gerrera's ship, Jin was falling in love with space.
But we can go there? If your mom and dad want to. Through hyperspace. He smiled at her. Hyperspace.
As they went back to the cabin, he saw that Mama and Papa Erso's demeanor had finally calmed. They actually looked happy. He told them of the remote, rugged world far from Imperial eyes that they could call home.
What do you think, Stardust? Should Lamu be our new home? Can Saw come and live with us? Papa looked at Saw and smiled. Saw is a very busy pilot, but I'm sure he'll visit us. Right, Saw? Saw nodded and made his eyes smile. Someone needs to keep an eye on you three.
And the hardened, lifelong guerrilla fighter spoke from the heart when he thanked them for fleeing the Empire.
I applaud you, Galen. I applaud all of you for taking a stand. You're my heroes. It's people like you who continue to inspire me to play a part in exposing the Empire's machinations.
Turning to Mama Bear, he handed her a comm card that would allow them to get in contact through heavily encrypted channels if they ever needed him. Saul would leave to regroup with the Partisans and plan a major strike on Kashyyyk. As Imperial advisors sat in newsrooms to guide and edit stories, the most trusted name in Hollow News was being told not to cover what was happening to the Wookiee people. Their top reporter, dubbed the Voice of the Empire, had grown furious at seeing her piece meant to showcase how the Empire betrayed their Clone Wars allies on Kashyyyk, with the Imp advisor applauding her great work on exposing the Wookiee threat, as they edited everything to only cover the violent resistance to occupation. In 14 BBY, a full Imperial blockade was in orbit over the lush world, protecting their crucial Rasher tree sap refinery. When the Jedi survivor Cal Kestis arrived, the partisan Wookiee alliance was in the thick of the fighting.
That was a close one, kid. Aren't you supposed to be watching the monitors?
Guerrilla fighters, Wookiees and off-worlders ambushing an Imperial convoy.
After the boy hijacked an AT-AT, he was able to turn the Imp's superiority against themselves, earning himself the respect of the galaxy's most wanted man.
Hey! Who are you?
Someone who just brought an AT-AT to the table. Who are you?
Someone making the Empire angry.
As they clear the place of Stormies, Saul introduces himself to this unexpected ally.
Saw Gerrera. What are you doing on Kashyyyk?
Looking for somebody. What are you doing here?
My companions and I came to Kashyyyk to disrupt Imperial supply lines. Who are you looking for?
A Wookiee chieftain named Tarful.
Tarful is impossible to find. There's a reason he's evaded the Empire for this long.
He's a freedom fighter?
He's the freedom fighter.
And Gerrera explains that some of the Wookiee slaves being forced into labor were members of Tarful's resistance. And after Cal does free a large group, we get another glimpse at the cold, practical mindset of Gerrera.
We need their help to stop the Empire. To the prisons! We need the Wookiees to finish this! We need the Wookiees to win this!
No one doubted his bravery or ability, but winning the war was the first and only priority, leading him to treat people as means to this end. Hardened by the losses over the years, he surely looked at himself this way too, but it resulted in a lack of concern for the individuals. Even Cal's mentor had reservations about Saul.
He's fighting a losing battle. I doubt freedom for the Wookiees is his only goal.
Either you heard the Partisans?
Rumors and cantinas, but not much to go on.
They call them radicals. I heard the Empire's got bounties on their heads.
Though none could deny his charisma.
These have been hard years. We've lost comrades, friends, family to the Empire. Dark times. And yet the fire still burns. Hope still burns. The Jedi are not yet lost. We are not yet lost. Kashyyyk is not yet lost. For the cause!
A year later, he would get the emergency call he had been fearing. The Empire had finally found the Ursos, and Krennic would personally arrive to plead with his old friend to come peacefully. The scientist knew the life would be won as a prisoner, from Wookiees working hard labor to top scientists in high-tech labs and plush penthouses. No matter how low or high-ranking you were in the Empire, you knew you were a slave to the Emperor.
So we were this close to providing peace and security for the galaxy.
You're confusing peace with terror.
Well, you have to start somewhere.
Lyra would not stand for this, and Jyn saw everything, though she would perfectly follow the plan that her parents and Saul had trained.
If the worst happens, and you need help but Papa and I aren't around, you press this button here, and Saul Gerrera will come.
And as she held her Kyber necklace, she remembered her teaching to trust the Force, and trust her training.
My child, go. Go. We have a long ride ahead of us.
Let's pause here for part 1, and pick up his training of Jyn, the spread of more partisan cells, friction with the Alliance, and Saul's increasing descent into madness and violence. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out our sponsor, Upside. Upside is a cashback app that enables people to get more value for their purchases and improve the profitability of local businesses, helping communities grow stronger. Already, they've partnered with 30,000 businesses and 25,000 gas stations across 48 states and DC. It is real cash back. Finally, someone has made it straightforward and simplified. Not the annoying points, miles, or loyalty reward conversions like some credit cards. You just cash out whenever you want and get it rewarded back to your bank account. The way it works is you check in on the app, use the card at a gas station, restaurant, or grocery store, and you'll see your cash back starting to stack up. What's funny is it works with any card payment you want, so while Upside users are earning 3 times cash back compared to those credit card cashback programs, you can still use that card you've been using, and simply by checking in and using Upside, you can get 2 cashback systems going. I just pull it up, search the area, and see a full list of locations with all kinds of great options. For me, the most regular and rewarding stops have been the gas stations, which I'm sure will help a bunch of you out there. To get started, download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play. Use my promo code MetaNerdz and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Thanks Upside for sponsoring this video. Hit that like button, share the video, comment something down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. Special thanks to our patrons, but most important of all, remember,